Quiet on set, you damn kids! Who wants to make a short? We'll pay you in IMDb credits and experience. Lights, camera, action, it's I Don't Give a Flick, your favorite film podcast. Oh yeah, Tarantino, Mero, and Spielberg, here's looking at you, kid.
We talk movies and TV shows and sometimes other things we like.
And no one's coming right at your fucking face. Every minute of every day will never stop.
We'll talk lenses, music, and Foley. We'll understand the depth of field.
We've got theories so out of this world and epic it'll blow off your fucking tits.
Oh yeah, that was bullshit.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of your favorite film podcast, I Don't Give a Flick. I'm your host, Jonny Blackburn, and alongside me this week, as they are every week without fail, I've got...
Gary Elmore.
And Neil Riley.
And this week we are coming to you live from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, Caesar's Palace in particular, because we have the money to rent out an entire hotel to ourselves. That's how rich we are. That's how many fans we have. Thank you to the listeners.
You made this possible.
I'm lying. We're all at our own separate humble abodes, and
well, you and I aren't separate.
Yeah, okay, but I meant that we're here and Neil's at his home.
Okay. Two of us are at the same
I mean,
abode.
I appreciate you clarifying that, Gary.
No problem. No problem.
I
Thank
don't
you.
care.
Thank
Everybody
you.
do what you want. Just leave me the fuck
Just leave me alone.
That's my new mantra. I've told you guys this is what I'm going by. It doesn't matter. We are going to be trying something very different tonight. We have not done this before. It's a film podcast, but it's a media-based podcast. So we've said that it's not out of the realm of possibility for us to talk about TV shows and commercials and, I don't know, music videos or documentaries or whatever. So tonight we are going to do just that. We are going to go over the greatest sitcoms of all time, and we're going to go ahead and debate that. And I'm looking forward to this because this one could get hairy. And once again, for the second week in a row, we enjoyed it so much last week, just having the three of us on for the action stars, the greatest action stars of all time. We're going to go ahead and keep the ball rolling in the good times with greatest sitcoms ever. So what has everybody been up to? Let's just start out with that. Has anybody actually done anything interesting over the last week? Anything at all? And it can be literally anything. Maybe you changed your diet up, or you took your shower time is a little longer than normal because you're depressed with your life and you just can't get out of bed in the morning. And
well, I got up to lemon racing.
You did,
which I talked about just in our last show.
I see. So I see. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to plug all of the sports or the racing that we're into nowadays.
Yes.
Okay.
And the car we're going to be used will be maintained by Revs Automotive, your friendly automotive repair shop.
We can't plug every fucking business that we're part of, Gary.
Sure, we can.
Oh, I'm on to Neil because I don't want to talk about this for a second episode in a row. Neil, what have you been up to? What's going on? How you doing?
Doing all right, keeping busy, working and getting ready for the little baby to be here.
Little barber. Gary had suggested earlier that in honor of your newborn child, that we should do parenting films as the topic for tonight's episode. I did veto that just because I didn't think there'd be enough for us to talk about.
So you got like 2 Minute a Baby and
that was
Look Who's Talking. About sums it up.
No, well, I mean, like how many movies about parenting are there? There's a lot.
How many interesting movies about parenting are there, though?
The
as
Road?
The main storyline.
The Road. You ever see that movie based on the Cormac?
Okay.
Okay, there's one. What else, Gary? What else is a really interesting movie?
Hook. You could talk about the parenting aspects in Hook. Yeah.
Right, but is that the primary issue?
I think that is the driving emotional factor of the movie.
When I think of parenting movies, I don't think of Hook, though.
So then The Shining is a parenting movie.
Yes, it is.
Yes, absolutely.
It's just a guy wanting to take his family to a cabin out in the woods.
I mean, technically, technically we can put Die Hard in there. because he just wants to get back and see his family. He wants to get back and see his kids.
Yeah.
Get back together with his wife.
Yeah, well, Die Hard is #1 movie in almost every category you can imagine.
The #1 non-Christmas movie
It
of all
is a
time.
Christmas movie. We cannot.
We
have
don't
this
want to
debate
do this.
again.
All right, that'll take too long. We don't have as much time as we normally do tonight. Gary, this was your idea tonight, and you actually did the itinerary for this one. So I will let you. I'm going to ask you to start us out on this. Let's get going. What
Okay.
makes a good sitcom? You had talked about that.
All right, so yeah, I was thinking what makes a good sitcom. So I kind of wanted us to talk about first the aspects of the show itself before we got into what our favorite are. So let's talk about the length of the show.
Okay.
Is there a difference between the half hour and the hour long sitcoms? Does that make a difference to their quality, how good they are, how punchy they are? Which do we prefer? A half hour, like a shorter one, or do we like the longer ones?
I like where your head's at with it. That question. I like how you're digging deep into it. I don't think I can think of any sitcoms that are an hour long, though, or even 45 minutes. They're mostly all 20 to 25 minutes for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are, and the ones that are an hour, I think, oftentimes may be debatable as whether they are a sitcom or not. Like
Okay.
The Orville, for example, is an hour long.
Okay, yeah, all
although-
right, sure.
although
It's
I
a great
don't know-
show.
It is
Yeah.
a great show.
I don't know if I would put The Orville in a sitcom category, though.
Okay, Neil? What would you put it in? You like the Orville a lot. You like Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah, I would say it's a sci-fi comedy, but I wouldn't say it's strictly a sitcom. They do have a lot of like learning moments, and their story arcs are a lot longer. I think sitcoms are more generally just short, 30 minutes, get your laughs in and move on.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's mandatory and a priority for all sitcoms. Yeah, to be 30 minutes.
Yeah, 'Cause
honestly.
I would agree. I mean, I didn't think an hour sitcom was gonna be anybody's favorite, because I think some of the key elements of a sitcom are that they're punchy, and funny, and then also at the end of the sitcom, everything is reset to basically what it was at the start. So you don't really generally have any forward progression.
Right. I think a TV show that's a drama is always going to have a slow burn. I feel like that's mandatory for a dramatic TV show. For the sitcom, yeah, I would agree. It's got to be quick-witted and just it's over fast. If you it leaves you wanting more if you've only got it there for 24 or 25 minutes. However long they are adding commercials and such. I'd agree. I would agree with that. A half hour for sure.
Okay, we're all in agreement with the half hour then. Okay,
Yeah.
so
unanimous. It's just like Tarantino is the number 2 director of all time. Yeah.
Okay, so what about material covered? Do we think that it's a requirement for a sitcom to be sort of all lighthearted jokes? I'm thinking like Seinfeld for this one.
Sure.
Or
Sunny would fall into that category too.
where it doesn't really have those heavy, serious moments. Where as other shows like Family Matters or even King of the Hill had serious parts to it.
Yeah.
Like
Fresh Prince.
Yeah. Like the episode of King of the Hill where Bill Dauterive thinks he's Lenore and so dresses up as his wife.
That's he finally has
really,
to break down.
Yeah. Like that was a kind of a serious moment at the end when Hank's like, I'm leaving you, anyway. So can sitcoms still be sitcoms if they're not all comedy?
Yes, I absolutely believe that not everything in the episode or that entire episode itself needs to be hilarious. Like for me, one of my favorite shows, which happens to be a sitcom of all times, is MASH. And MASH does have some very heavy moments. It is, about the Korean War and, people getting killed and people's lives changing and growing and, shattering. But it's still overall it's a sad story told in a funny setting.
Yeah, and especially with MASH, I think once Alan Alda kind of got more creative control in the later seasons, it definitely took on a
heavier set.
It definitely got a lot more serious in terms of the topics and how they were presented, and kind of lost a lot of that real comedic element. But I don't think that was a bad change for MASH.
Not at all. Not at all. I think that it's actually it's not a necessity for a sitcom to have that element solely. I think that it's okay that you see a lot of different examples with both, and I think the Seinfeld reference is very good, where it's just comedy the entire time, and it's just quick wit and punchy, as you put it. Always Sunny falls into that category. Hell, even if you want to talk about Mike Judge, Beavis and Butthead, was I personally didn't really like it as a kid, but I knew I had a lot of friends that grew up watching it a ton and quoting it all the time, doing those stupid voices. That one was the same thing. King of the Hill was a different breed, but shows like that certainly come into popularity, and they come into mainstream culture, and it affects a lot of people. And I think it can be both. I think it's kind of one of those integrated styles. It's an integrated answer to that.
I would say like the actual legit sitcom where there's nothing else but comedy is really not. It's kind of a dying element. Like you don't have a lot of those. Like Seinfeld, I can't think of any serious moments in Seinfeld.
Not many, because even like when George's wife or his fiance passes away. What was her name again?
Suzanne? No.
Susan,
Yes.
Right? Even when she dies, George hears about it from the doctor, and he's like, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
Because he wanted a way out,
right?
Without actually having to confront the problem, and then he found it. And
although,
they were like,
did he? Because then he got nominated to the
the board of directors for her
charity or whatever.
For her charity. And he's like, "Really? Are you sure? You're positive?" And he's like, "Yes, she's dead, defeated, gone. She's not going to live again." And when he walks over to Kramer, Jerry, and Elaine, they all just kind of stand there and go, "Sorry?" Question mark.
Right,
like, why? If your friend's fiance passed away, that would not be the reaction, I think, from your close friends. Normally,
no.
Which makes that show just such a classic and such a gem, because it was so different in that aspect.
And as we all found out in the last episode, they're all terrible people.
Well, we figured that. Yeah, they're all conceited narcissists. I mean, they only think about themselves. And it's funny in a lot of those shows we're talking about, especially that and Always Sunny. That's how it is.
Yeah.
There's the characters,
right? But like they could take heavy things that, like, they spoofed the Son of Sam in one episode,
right?
And like they're I think they're
or
all
the
New
JFK
Yorkers.
Assassination,
right? Yeah, with the loogie,
yeah, because Wayne Knight was in it, and he was also in JFK, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cool thing that I've always really liked about sitcoms is typically, even more than dramatic shows, maybe not more necessarily, but they take really difficult issues to discuss, and they put it mainstream, and they put a comedic twist on it, obviously. But those particular sitcoms, like a Fresh Prince, or like whatever, Parks and Rec, or The Office, or MASH, or whatever. I'm sure All in the Family did the same thing. Family Matters, Step by Step, whatever. I actually kind of feel like they address those problems and how it affects everyday people better than dramas do. When I see things like one that pops into my head is when Will Smith's father comes back into his life.
Oh God,
and then that one made me cry. Yeah, and it was. And he's like, I'm gonna marry a beautiful honey, and I'm gonna raise my kids right, and I'm gonna do everything that because he didn't give a damn about me. And then he breaks down. Why didn't he want me? And when I think of Fresh Prince, I think of the crazy antics of Will Smith, and the shitty dancing by Carlton, and all the fat jokes they make at Uncle Phil, But I also think of stuff like that, people being abandoned by one or both parents, and then being able to deal with it as an adult and still rise to prominence and rise to greatness to have a fulfilling life. And I always have loved that about sitcoms that are able to do that, which is it's not something you would think about off the top of your head. When you think of a great sitcom, you're like, oh, what's the funniest? What is a show I can put on in the background and do some housework or do some homework or whatever, and then come back to it later, laugh for 5 minutes at a scene, then go back to what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them, they tackle really tough issues and they really get into the meat of it and they get into the heart of it. And I really appreciate that.
Like, I don't know if anybody would consider like Wonder Years a sitcom.
Yeah, that's another good one.
That also had a lot of heavy stuff in it. I mean, spoiler alert, but in the last episode, his dad dies, and it's just like, you know, and like it really talks about a lot of adolescent things as you're growing up in a really interesting light. So yeah, I mean, I think sitcoms, or at least shows that have that are primarily driven by comedic elements, have an opportunity to kind of get past your defenses as a human being and really touch you on the inside and help you understand a complicated or a painful situation or element in life in a way that like a pure drama wouldn't do.
Yeah, because it's more lighthearted and it's geared typically it's geared at a broader audience or families, and it's a shorter episode as well. And so you kind of, and we talked about this actually when we had I was listening to our Adam Sandler episode the other day, and we talked about when you actually had said when a comedian goes to a dramatic role, you let your guard down. And so it surprises you when they have that dramatic moment. It's the same thing with a sitcom. You kind of let your guard down because it's just lighthearted and comedic the entire time. And then boom, they slap it in your face and you're like, wow, that's relevant to these characters. Like that's something I've experienced, or I know somebody that experienced that. And it's touching. It's pure. I like that aspect.
Neil, do you think that sitcoms are enhanced or reduced by having, you know, those dramatic moments in them?
Oh, I definitely think it's enhanced. I mean, it is a nice break, you know, every time they throw in an episode like that or a heavy topic. You know, I don't think it takes anything away from it. I think it still progresses the story along. I think it actually progresses the characters usually more or faster than just a straight sitcom episode would. So, yeah, I have no problem with them.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that sitcoms have become more episodic. You know, it's not like, if you look at, you know, modern sitcoms like Arrested Development or, you know, Parks and Recreation or The
Modern
Office.
Family.
Like it tells a continuing story rather than just kind of resetting at exactly the same at the start as sitcoms of old used to, because they were more just sort of like 30-minute comedy shows. Right. So I think that has been a very interesting change in that regard.
Yeah, and I agree.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to, are there any characters that are typically in a sitcom, or any, you know, sort of tropes of a character that's in a sitcom? Like I think one of them that's obvious is sort of like the dad that is, you know, either kind of like, you know, overworked, as in the case of, you know, Ed Bundy, not Ted Bundy, Ed Bundy.
Yes. For those of you that don't know that series, what series is that, Gary? Some people may not have seen it.
Oh, that is from Married with Children, which is a fantastic, fun digression. So when they were auditioning for the role of, you know, Ed Bundy at the start of that, they had a lot of different actors that came up and auditioned for it. You know, they'd come in and they'd read the lines and try and figure out, you know, what, you know, who was going to be the best person. And Ed O'Neill, who was the guy that eventually got cast in that role, the producer said that they went with him because when he came up to the door to knock before coming in, or before opening the door to go in, he kind of stopped there and just hung his head and looked just completely defeated before going inside, which they were like, that is exactly the character we want for this role. And yeah, I think that was really well cast. Anyway, so
it was
awesome.
Ed O'Neill, Katie Sagal, young Christina Applegate. I don't remember the name of the son.
I can't remember, but then
David something.
Oh yeah, David something. Yeah.
David something. That's a good last
But
name.
yeah, are there any sort of like tropes that you kind of expect to see commonly in a sitcom as you watch them?
Absolutely. The wisecracker is always one.
Okay.
Like the guy that comes in and has the quick one-liners, or he's making fun of everybody else. That's not normally the central protagonist. It's usually not. It's usually a side character that they might dive into his or her backstory later in another episode. But you always have that. I think that's a pretty big one that's been around for quite some time, actually. What else?
So would that be like, I guess maybe Kramer from Seinfeld?
Yeah, Kramer would certainly be in there. Absolutely. No, Kramer would be the goofball, I would say. I would say the goofball is also, actually, that's also another one that would be pretty common, I would have to say. God, let's see. So Step by Step had the oldest daughter. I forgot her name. But she was always like that.
Family Matters with Michael J. Fox's character, who's kind of always...
Family Matters. No. Family Matters was the one with
I'm mixing
Reginald Val Johnson and Julia White as
Family
Steve
Ties. Is that what
Family
it is?
Ties?
Family Ties is what you're thinking of.
Thank you, Neil.
I don't know.
Something about a family. Who knows?
Michael J. Fox of Family Matters would be interesting, though.
That would have.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, that was already a pretty strong series. I think that would have made it pretty interesting.
I think going along with that, like a lot of the family ones, if you have a grandpa in the series, that he's usually, kind of a curmudgeon or out of it. I always think of like Frasier's dad.
Yeah. And he's actually what's cool about what was the guy's
John Mahoney.
John Mahoney, thank you.
John Mahoney.
What made him so great in Frasier too was he was also a bit of a combo between, he was also the wisecracker and he was also the bully. Typically you have the bully sometimes too. And I love it when they're able to actually mix those archetypes together and make them into one character. That's always fun.
Yeah. And it was because, just digressing onto Frasier for a second, because that's one of my favorite sitcoms.
Well, it's the best spinoff ever.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. I don't know. Joey was pretty good.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on.
Like it was because you never met Frasier's mom, because she passed away before the show begins. So you don't have like her to balance them off of. So, but you can see like from their dad where they get a lot of their personality traits, and I like how the writers and the actors in that chose to portray that, because the dad was not sort of as esoteric as Frasier and Niles, but he did like to give his jabs at people, and Frasier and Niles definitely had that aspect to him as well.
What do you guys think about the archetype of the square? Like the guy that's really like a Hank Hill type, or you want to maybe a Niles Crane or something, who might be like a square dork mix almost.
Frasier too. I mean,
Frasier seemed
to
a little bit. Frasier to me kind of came across more as the charmer. He was certainly a straight edge dude, but I mean, he's still like, you see in a lot of those, especially in the 90s, you see a lot of the protagonists being like they're single males or single females. Typically you see it with Sex and the City, you saw it with Seinfeld, and then you also saw it with Frasier. Cheers had the same thing. You see that the successful kind of bachelor that is always going out with these women or going out with these men, whatever, and kind of constantly getting action, I guess, or just dating around a lot. But what do you guys think of the square? Is that one that's necessary to have a successful sitcom?
So I guess like the sitcom 2.5 Men.
Sure.
You've got Charlie Sheen, who is
that charmer. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
He was the charmer.
Yeah. And then you've got his brother, I think it was.
Yeah.
Alan. Yeah. Alan, that is very much sort of the straight-laced kind of square.
And he would be the combo of like, same thing. He'd be like a Niles Crane, a square, or like a dork, or dweeb. I don't know.
Yeah. And
I think they have their place, and I think they are great to have because you can usually run a lot of jokes off of them.
Right. Making a lot of fun.
So yeah,
of them.
I don't think they're a necessity, but I don't think they detract anything.
Yeah, and it really kind of goes back to that old school of having the straight man in a comedy routine. So you've got like the one that's all kind of wacky and kooky, and the one that is more Square, as you said, and the Square sets up the jokes for the wacky and kooky guy to kind of knock him out of the park.
Sure. Yeah.
And the Square acts as sort of a foil to that, so you can kind of play the jokes off of that and see the different levels of humor for that.
Yeah, it's cool that it's set up basically like an old school Abbott and Costello routine. It's that kind. I mean, I Love Lucy basically was textbook on that. You have the goofball charmer, which was Lucille Ball, and then you have Ricardo Montalban as or not Montalban.
Ricardo Montalban.
Sorry, Ricky Ricardo. Thank you. That would be also a very different show.
I love you, Lucy. Why do you always cause me such trouble?
You see that same dynamic between the two of them, and that's going real old school. But that formula is always successful, and it was cool to see it. So one that you guys always talk about that you mentioned was MASH. I really never got into MASH. My dad loved it. He used to watch the shit out of it. It was on. He always watched the reruns in the 90s. I just never got into it as a kid. And then when we got older, there were other shows on that I was more interested in. Did MASH, as that is also one of the most successful sitcoms of all times, just TV series in general.
Probably the most. I can't imagine.
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't know. I know it's got probably the best series finale.
Sure.
Yeah, and actually the last episode of MASH was watched by more people just number-wise than like any Super Bowl, I think, until like 2014 or 13.
Okay. So even with that in hand, what type of chemistry or what type of archetypes made MASH so successful? Because I don't know as much about that one. Like Alan Alda's character, what we talked about. So we talked about the charmer and the square, the dork, the goofball, the wisecracker, the matriarch of the family or the patriarch of the family, whatever. Mm-hmm. What type of archetypes made that sitcom so successful, especially for our listeners that didn't get to really see the reruns of that back in the day because it was a 70s, 80s sitcom.
Yeah. Alan Alda playing Hawkeye, he was definitely a combination of both the charmer and the cut up. Mm-hmm. They had two different roommates during the series, and both of them would be considered the square. They were the butt of a lot of the jokes.
Major Frank was their first roommate. Okay. And like he was, very, he's more weaselly than straight laced. And then he was replaced in the show after I think 4 seasons with Major
Charles Emerson Winchester.
The third. Yes.
The third.
Who was really straight laced. And what was interesting with him is one of Hawkeye's character attributes throughout the first seasons until Charles got there was Hawkeye was the best doctor in the camp. So like he was very insubordinate most of the time. Yeah, but he was also really the best guy. So when Charles gets there, he's a better doctor than Hawkeye. And so you get to kind of see Hawkeye have to come to terms with that. And it forces him to have some humility, which was a very interesting way to take that. And MASH ran for so long. I think it was 11 seasons or so.
Yeah, it lasted longer than the actual Korean War.
Yeah, far
and away.
But like it ran so long that you got to see these characters develop so much over the course of such a long period of time because Hawkeye was definitely the lead character, but Radar O'Reilly was there for a very long time.
Klinger was definitely the goofball.
Yeah, Klinger, he's the guy that dresses up in a dress like I'm trying to get a Section 8 because I'm crazy. Then Margaret Houlihan, Hot Lips, the sexy head nurse lady, but she was also kind of also had that sort of matriarch figure to her because she was in charge of all the nurses. So she was a hard but a very caring person. So you got to really. MASH was just a really great show. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I highly recommend, you take the time out to go watch it. So Neil, since you've seen it, did you like Henry Blake or Colonel Potter more?
So I liked them both. Henry Blake, I definitely think was funnier. I think he had better lines. But I think Sherman Potter was a better character. And I absolutely love Harry Morgan. So I think Potter's my vote.
Yeah, I mean, Potter to me, I think he was, because Colonel Blake was the first guy, and he was really kind of loosey goosey, like not really strict. And then Colonel Potter comes in, and he's very strict, and wants to keep things organized. So you also get that nice dichotomy there. And the writers were not afraid to play with that on the show.
Okay.
And I think as Alan Alda got more control over the show, they even continued to go further in that, because the last episode of MASH is not a comedy; it is a drama. Gosh, I can't. I don't want to spoil it, but it is like 50 years old. But like they wrap up a lot of story threads in that last one. That's quite touching. So that's kind of interesting to see a show that starts off really much as a sitcom and ends very strongly a drama.
Yeah. Do you guys think MASH went too long?
No, I don't think they ever had a jumping the shark moment. I think MASH stayed solid all the way through. I can't think of an episode that I was just like, this is really bad. Can you, Neil?
No, I agree. I don't think there was ever a point where I'm like, they're just dragging this on. I just think it did well evolving throughout the seasons.
Mm-hmm. And that may have been because you kind of had the first third of it that was the more hardcore comedy part, and then you had the sort of transition phase in the middle, and then the drama phase at the end. Okay. So that may have been why it stayed fresh, because you weren't doing sort of the same thing again and again, like F Troop or Gilligan's Island or something.
Yeah.
Like if Gilligan's Island had ran 11 years.
Oh God.
There's just no way.
Get the hell off this goddamn island.
There's only. I mean, they made like 3 movies somehow from Gilligan's Island.
This is true.
I never really got that about series back in the day when they made movies because the sitcom was so successful. I just kind of thought that was sitcoms are sitcoms, and they should be 30 minutes because they're enjoyable from those 30 minutes, and that's that. You're not going to see him make a movie about Scrubs or Malcolm in the Middle or Modern, I don't know, or News Radio or something. Like it's not going to work.
Okay.
Anyways.
All right. So tropes are definitely, I guess, a thing in sitcoms.
It's formulaic. Yeah. It has to be there. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, they help us as the audience understand what the characters symbolizing and what they're doing and kind of how to react to them.
I think that, but I think that goes for any genre of film. It goes for horror or for TV. It goes for horror, drama. I mean, there's a different, obvious, but even if which like for like my own person, like the majority of my experience in television working has been reality TV. And even in that, there's still archetypes and character tropes that a lot of like these trash TV dating shows follow, or the shows based on medical discoveries, or
Are you saying that reality TV is scripted, Johnny?
I'm saying that a large portion of reality TV is certainly scripted, or you
heard it here, ladies and gentlemen.
I am absolutely flabbergasted.
Oh yeah, I can't talk about said shows on air right now, but I can tell you that a lot of them are, and people are force-fed lines.
Okay.
And they force them into situations that they may not necessarily be in if it weren't for alcohol or other very tempting scenarios that I won't bring up. I'll end it on that.
Speaking of tempting scenarios, what sort of settings do we have for sitcoms? Are there any that are just really good for comedy, or does it really matter what the setting is? Can it be anything?
Oddly enough, like, can we talk about coffee shops for a second?
Sure.
Can we talk about coffee shops being, and I bring up Friends and Frasier, two of by far the most successful comedies of all time. Seinfeld was diner. Yeah. But so sure. Yeah. Restaurants, and you can talk, I mean, bars too. Always Sunny and Cheers. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, Cheers, the whole fucking thing was a goddamn bar.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's because there's two different types when you come to that. I think that boils down to two different types of comedic settings. It boils down to a home, which is typically going to be with really close roommates that are essentially a family or an actual family. That's one. Mm-hmm. And the second one, which, you look at Family Matters or Boy Meets World or any of Roseanne, whatever. And then there's the other one where it's just a group of single friends for the most part. And then you look at Friends and Seinfeld and Always Sunny and Cheers and even Frasier to an extent, because they went between his apartment and that.
And Johnny, what was the name of the cafe they went to in Frasier?
Damn it. I
For
used
$20.
to know this. I used to know this.
It was the Neil. Do you know?
It
don't let him look it up. Don't let him type it in.
Fuck. Cafe. It starts with an N.
It was the Cafe Nervosa.
All right. I used to know that. I feel like that was in a trivia that we went to one time.
Possibly.
Maybe not. But yeah, I think it kind of falls into those two. And so that's funny. Set location tropes, you could even say. I think it kind of falls into those two.
Well, I think that also with sitcoms, they typically, have sort of limited budgets, or at least historically used to, compared to like Game of Thrones or something like that.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. That's fair.
Because you're just any sort of TV show that's like weekly, you're going to have to base it around a set, like a few small sets, or outside locations. Right. So, like even the West,
especially if you're filming in front of a live audience.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it's always that you noticed, and that's a good segue into the next portion, but it's always for sitcoms, you're always going to have, it's at home, it's at a recreational food eatery or place where you can drink, or it's at the workplace. If you look at Wings, or you look at 30 Rock, or anything else that falls into that category. If you look at a drama, yeah, you're right. Because drama is always, the world that they live in a drama is so much more chaotic, and it's pandemonium at times, and there's so much more going on. They have to go to different places all the time to explain these scenes, and in a comedy, it seems like everything is more boxed in, because typically the issues are more boxed in. They're going to be, like we talked about, they're going to be lighter, and they're going to be more situational, hence the name of sitcom, situational comedy.
Yeah. And I mean, like I think most people, if you count the time that they spend either at home, at work, or at like their favorite recreational place in real life, that's probably going to be 90% of their life right there.
Right. That's probably true.
Yeah. So I think sitcoms.
Don't forget to add sleeping.
Yeah.
You could have a sitcom about sleeping. They haven't done that yet. That's a lead feather idea.
Didn't Bob Hope in his sitcom at the end, his last episode, like he woke up and he was in another sitcom that he was in?
Maybe. I don't remember, but that was one episode. We could do an entire series on it.
Just a guy sleeping?
Think about it.
Okay.
And it's all about his dreams. I guess that almost becomes a drama. Whatever. Anyways.
But yeah, so I mean, like you think of Home Improvement, like you had his home, obviously, and his workplace. And
yeah.
Those
were the two, time, yeah.
And those were the two main sets.
Right.
You think about
Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah, you had
it was just the homes, I guess.
But no, what I'm saying, like, it's just all kind of based around there, because sitcoms, I think, more than almost any other category, kind of appeal to the everyman. Sort of like everybody should feel
the every person for
comfortable.
Sure.
Like there might be a lot of people that don't like watching, a high drama,
like a Breaking Bad or a Sons of Anarchy or whatever.
What was that horrible one with all those horrible people when William H. Macy was in it?
Shameless.
Yeah.
I love Shameless, by the way. But
yeah. I couldn't stand all those people. I'm like, God, I don't want to root for any of these
you
people.
think Always Sunny is funny, but yet you've only watched like a dozen episodes.
Dayman,
champion of the night, man.
Yeah.
Or Fighter of the Night, man. Whatever.
Well, in Shameless, because it's a Showtime show.
Showtime, yeah.
It like the people in Always Sunny are not quite the same level of reality of horrible people that they are in Shameless. Like,
I don't know about that one, Gary.
I mean, like they don't cover the same like types. Like Always Sunny would be like PG-13, and Shameless is clearly R, right?
If Always Sunny was not on FX and if it was like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where it was allowed to be on HBO or Showtime, then I think they would have gone full rated R. Like they would be cursing and they would be showing bad sex scenes and things of that nature.
But it would have been a much different show.
Yeah, I mean, FX is they're certainly more mature content and progressive in that area than a major network is. But I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, the setting, I think, to me doesn't really matter, because you can have for a sitcom or a comedy show, because you can have those elements anywhere. Like, as we were talking about earlier, the Orville, it takes place on a spaceship,
Right.
Primarily, and that I think that's a really, really good show.
I don't think that it necessarily has to be at a specific location, but I do think the location plays a major part of it. I mean, you're not going to have a sitcom at a library, most likely. You're not going to have it at a morgue.
What about Community?
That was at a college.
It's kind of library-esque.
Not really. Like, it's all around the university. Like, it's all in classrooms and meeting room spaces and dorms and.
Well, I mean, it's just a smaller set than that, but I mean, it's the same kind of. I mean, I could see a comedy at a library, and I could see a comedy at a morgue. I mean, Scrubs was
at a hospital.
It was a hospital. There's a morgue in a hospital. I mean, like, I don't think that would be
that's not preventative.
The same, I mean, it would probably not be a lighthearted comedy.
Probably not. I certainly think that the location. I would disagree. I think the location matters. I don't think it's at all the selling point. You're like, oh, people didn't watch Cheers because it was set in a bar almost the entire time. They didn't. That's not why they watched it. It was because the characters were hilarious and the relationships they had.
Right.
Everybody.
Ultimately, yeah, it comes down to the characters.
I don't think it's irrelevant. I certainly think that it matters a great deal where the location is. So I think it sets it up.
Okay. Neil, what about you?
I mean, I think it's important, like we talked about, coffee shops, cafes, the bar. Those are all social setting places. That's where people can interact with one another. Yeah, the library and the morgue, I could see it happening maybe for an episode or two, but I don't know about running a series in those settings. But like, most series aren't going to take place in a gym, because you go to the gym by yourself, you put in your ear pods, you work out. Sure. There's not really a lot of social interaction. Whereas a bar, anybody can walk in that door, and now it's a new topic of conversation, a new character to introduce. So I think it is important. I didn't even think about that. No, that's a really good point. You can, when you're in the social setting, you can open the door for new people to walk in, and an entirely new episode is born. That's a really good point. Yeah. Well, if you go into a place where it's just isolated, then you severely limit the options that you have of new characters to come in and out. I mean,
but like, look at Parks and Recreation. That takes place in a small town Parks and Recreation government office.
Well, it takes place in the city hall, so all of the departments are
the city
around.
hall, a place where you think of when you think of city hall, you think of fun and joy, right?
Yes, I mean that's what I think of all the time.
I think it's just that
it's a gala.
Yeah, I think it's just that nobody's made a sitcom about that. I think that's definitely doable, though. I think it just hasn't been done, because before Parks and Recreation came out, or before 30 Rock or The Office, most people, I don't think they think of their desk job office as a place of enjoyment.
I mean, I don't even know if I can agree. That's very true. Yeah, if it's a place of enjoyment, it depends on what you do for a living. I don't even know if I can agree with that, though, because there's just so many sitcoms that are based around the workplace, and not even just like, if we look at Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it's based around a police station, or Cheers is based at a bar. But you look at Workaholics, who got really popular off Adult Swim and Cartoon Network and stuff. That was based at an office. Look at The Office.
But what I'm saying is, before they had the sitcom of whatever that The Office or whatever,
right?
You might not have thought of that as a place that that'd be a great place to have a sitcom. It's just because somebody hasn't done one in a morgue doesn't mean it couldn't be done.
I think it'd be a lot
people
harder.
Are dying to do that.
Oh, good one. But I think it'd be a lot harder to do that. And they've done it in, you want to talk about libraries or bookstores. Ellen did that. You remember the Ellen show, the Ellen DeGeneres show, which I actually loved. I loved it. I loved it a ton. They did one called Stacked, which was a Pamela Anderson and Christopher Lloyd actually was in it, and it ran for one season, and that was during the era of like I told you, Greg the Bunny ran for a season, and
Was this in like the mid 90s?
Andy Richter controls the universe. It was we can hear you, Neil. It was like the early 2000s.
Okay.
So it can be done. Obviously, those ones didn't. They weren't very. I don't know if that necessarily had to do with the setting, but I guess what I feel is that the setting is more relevant than you think. I don't think it's one of the top 2 most important aspects you need to have a successful formula for that sitcom. But I definitely think it's in your top 5. I don't think it's something that should be ignored.
Okay.
That's just it's just me. But I see what you're saying. I agree with Neil though. I think that having the characters in a social situation is very, very crucial and critical to be bringing characters in and out of your story arcs or your storylines.
Yeah, and that is another, I think, key factor. Neil, good job on hitting on that. That you need to have sort of an ability to have a revolving door of characters that come in for just an episode or 2 and then leave to set up the scenario or whatnot, because you think like you've got like generally like a core group of people. Like you think of like Seinfeld has the 4 people, King of the Hill has Hank, Peggy, and Bobby, and they interact with other people, and it's through those interactions and with each other that's where the comedy kind of arises. So like George Costanza, I was in the pool, it was cold, I was in the pool, had to happen with somebody who was like just in there for that one episode.
A one and done.
I agree. You can't have an isolated sitcom where it follows 3 to 5 people, but it only follows 3 to 5 people and nobody else, and there's never guests, and there's never side characters that come in and out maybe once or twice a season. You can't, where it's just 3 people.
Because I mean, even like Gilligan's Island, they'd run into other people.
The Beatles showed up for an episode, or the Monkees, whatever, and they have like
it was the 60s, it was a crazy time.
It was a crazy time. And that goes for every decade. You want to talk about, Golden Girls did it, Bewitched did it, whatever, all of them, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're all coming down that setting is important, but not the most important.
I think it's more important than you think it is.
Okay.
I wouldn't put it. I think you're considering it to be the bottom of the list. I would consider it to be more like the upper half of the list.
Okay, so you and Neil are high on setting.
I would think Neil and I are both up there, unless I'm wrong, Neil. But
one of the things that's interesting is a lot of sitcoms, more than any other shows, have live audiences, and they used to have a lot more.
Used to, for sure,
have live audiences a lot more, and that's always. You don't really ever get that with dramas. Like MASH never had a live audience.
Of course not.
But like, does the live audience help or hinder the show? Because, a lot of times they'll just have applause signs on to make people laugh. But is that good or bad? Because like, when they started getting rid of the laugh tracks and the live audiences, that paced the comedy a lot different. So you look at an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they pause for laughter and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Whereas if you look at an episode of Scrubs, like that comedy is just more kind of punchy, and you don't have those pauses. I mean, they may stop and look up, or The Office. So is it better to have a live audience, or does that detract from it?
So for me, the live audience detracts a lot from it. It takes it away. It slows down the actual comedy, I think. And I think the writers can be a little less comedic with a live audience, if that makes sense. Like without one, the writing has to be spot on to make you actually, oh, that was funny. Whereas laugh tracks or live audience, you can be like, oh, they're laughing. Okay, I guess that was funny. I think it makes for a better show. I think it requires better writing to not have it.
Interesting.
Okay.
Johnny? So, Neil, I ask you this. One of your favorite all-time sitcoms is Seinfeld. Had a live audience. What do you think about that?
I mean, yes, it did have a live audience, and it is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. But then I go and watch like Friends, and I absolutely hate that show. And I think a lot of it has to do with the writing is so lackadaisical that they just pump in laughs where they think they should go.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you watch Friends, Neil? What?
You've watched Friends,
No,
Gary.
I avoided
Tons of
that as much as I
times.
could.
Just saying, I went a long time ago. I was in the middle of a Friends binge, and Gary would come and sit down with. We were roommates at the time again, and I was in the middle of watching, and he would sit down with me sometimes, and would watch a couple episodes, and then whatever. And then I went to Romania for business for a couple weeks, and I come back, and most of my Friends episodes, like it jumped from like season 3 to season whatever. I didn't watch any while I was overseas.
Maybe you did. Did you give your password out to anybody?
No, I didn't. I was using your account. How could I have given the password to anybody? Huh?
Bon appetit.
Shut up. Stop trying to detract from the fact that you liked Friends. And you won't admit it because you think it's funnier if you don't. But you did. And it's okay. It's a good show.
Okay. So laugh track, Jonny.
Anyways, I actually, oddly enough, I agree and disagree with Neil. I think, and here it is, I think it depends on how it's written. If it covers typically lighter subjects, if the humor is less crass and crude, okay, if it's more about being sarcastic, then I think that a laugh track is and it's got a little more zany with the characters. I think it's typically going to be better to have a live studio audience. I don't know why. I mean, if you go down the list and if you look at Seinfeld, you look at Frasier, you look at Fresh Prince, you look at Golden Girls, Friends, whatever, all of those worked because of the tone of comedy that they were written behind. If you look at shows that work without a laugh track, typically the comedy is going to be, like I said, it's going to be more crass. It's going to be more vulgar, minus the cursing, swearing normally, because you look at stuff, it's going to be a drier comedic tone as well. Parks and Rec, The Office, Always Sunny, Malcolm in the Middle, 30 Rock, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, King of the Hill, a lot of that comedy. I feel like all of those are equally funny shows in different ways, but I think it's different when you've got drier comedy that's typically more crass, maybe not in all of those. No laugh track is necessary, but when it's just a little bit more sarcastic and lighthearted and the characters are a little zanier, I think having the laugh track helps it a great deal, actually. So I think it just depends. I really do. I don't think it detracts in any way, though, from the ones that I named.
It's more based on the type of show.
Absolutely. Okay. It's based on the type, like I just said, it's based on the type of comedy tone that it's written with.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe that.
Yeah, I would. It's interesting because I've acted on stage and on camera before, and it's a very different feeling.
Well, you're an international fashion model.
Yeah, I am. Stay hard, baby. That's the company I did a model for. That's okay. Anyway,
did a commercial for a Swedish men's clothing company.
Yes.
It's fine. You did a good job. Made some money. It was great.
Made some money. You'll be fine. Just stay hard.
Just stay hard.
Jesus. Okay. But like going out in front of like an audience as an actor gives you a different energy than not having an audience there, just having a crew filming you. So I think that does play a role in how the actors come across. So like, you think Home Improvement, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in Home Improvement, when he went to work, he was working on a show that had a live audience.
Right.
But I think that was the actual audience for Home Improvement. They were just,
it was always, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't like those were actors pretending to be the audience. It was the actual live audience of Home Improvement.
Because you have to think a lot of those sitcoms that had those laugh tracks and things like that, it wasn't even laugh tracks, it was a live audience typically. Most of those shows were run by a comedian.
Yeah.
They were the star of it. It was, Seinfeld or Jerry Seinfeld or Tim Allen or whoever warming up the crowd. And they were just used to that since they were the star. They obviously were able to say, I want this to be filmed in front of a live studio audience. Give me what I want.
Especially if they're like run by like a stand-up comic like Tim Allen or Jerry Seinfeld was.
Or,
it helps
Ray
them.
Romano, whatever.
Yeah, it really helps them understand, like, because they get their cues from the audience. Of, is this funny? Should I press this a little bit more, or should I back off this? Are they not reacting to it? So I think there's some good aspects to that. Although with some shows, it definitely seems like they just put the laugh track on, and it really feels like, Jeb Bush up there saying, please clap, and it doesn't come off well. It's just like, obviously a recording playing, people laughing or clapping, and it doesn't sound, it kind of takes you out of whatever the humor is. And usually they do that when there's a joke that doesn't land very well, or the show's just not funny. I personally, like, I love a lot of those old sitcoms from like the 80s and 90s that had the live audience. I think that the new way that they do it without the live audience typically has, humor that's more pithy and more interesting in a lot of ways. But yeah, I would say that if it's done right, I think a live audience works fine.
I mean, I see it that way. I mean, I see it your way, what you're saying, but I don't know. Like, I always like to use a comparison between Arrested Development and Big Bang Theory.
Mhm.
They're both funny shows for different reasons, but I always think that Big Bang Theory is a dumb show about smart people, and Arrested Development is a smart show about dumb people. And Arrested Development doesn't use laugh tracks or anything, but Big Bang Theory does. And I just feel like the jokes in Big Bang Theory are kind of forced on you, where Arrested Development is much more subtle, and they slip them in a lot easier.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the same thing I was saying with the comedic tone. Like Arrested Development they're genius with how they do that. Yeah. And if they added those laugh tracks, I agree with you. It would just ruin the moment. It would ruin the joke.
Yeah. I don't think any show with the added laugh tracks is good. I think it's only the ones that have the audience actually they're laughing.
Right.
But yeah, I think Big Bang Theory is a perfect example, because that's kind of a much more recent sitcom. And that was kind of the last show that I can think of that had a laugh track in it. I can't think of one that they've made since then that had a laugh track.
On the major networks, they still do the laugh tracks a fair amount
on ongoing sitcoms.
Yeah. So Mom, I guess, which just recently went off air, but it was one with Allison Janney and Anna Faris that actually wasn't horrible. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but it was serviceable.
She was great in I, Tonya.
She was. Allison Janney's good in pretty much anything she does.
Yeah, she really is. Allison, if you want to come on the show, give me a call.
Oh my God, I would lose my shit.
Allison,
I don't know
John
if I'd be able to do that interview. I love Allison Janney. Very underrated actress. Anyways, I guess how underrated can somebody be if they're an Oscar winner? I guess
they can't be.
Yeah. Okay. Just people don't talk about her enough. Anyways, yeah. No, absolutely. I think we're all in agreement. It just, for the most part, I guess it depends on the show. But for me, I don't necessarily have a preference between either. Neil, it sounds like you have a preference with no laugh track. Gary, for you, it seems kind of like you're up in the air.
I don't like laugh tracks, because that seems like
when I say laugh tracks, I mean the live studio audience laughing. Okay. Yeah, because we actually don't know in the editing. Maybe the live studio audience laugh was not loud enough, and so they needed to add one.
Have you seen Home Improvement? How could you not laugh at that?
Well, I'm not Gary. There have been thousands of sitcoms over the years, like tens of thousands.
That's the only one.
That's the only one there.
But yeah, when it makes me feel like the jokes are not funny, and so they're just saying, "Here's some laughter. This is funny. Laugh at it." That's when I don't like them, and that seems to have happened much more frequently. In the late 90s to the 2000s.
Yeah, they're certainly drifting away from that.
We hope that you are enjoying this rousing episode of Let Feather Productions' I Don't Give a Flick. To help us bring you more of the content that you love, please consider following us on Patreon at patreon.com/letfeather. There are 3 tiers to choose from, with special and exclusive merchandise in our VIP level. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming. Now that we've kind of discussed what makes a good sitcom, let's all talk about what our top 5 sitcoms of all time are, and see if we have any agreement or disagreement. And should we make a Mount Rushmore +1 of top sitcoms?
Mount Rushmore +1. I love that, man. I just love that so much.
Okay, so Neil, what is one of your favorite sitcoms of all time?
So I mean, we've talked about it a handful of times, but if we're gonna go on a Mount Rushmore, I think Seinfeld deserves a place of honor. It's a hilarious show. Everything about it from beginning to end. Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David did a fantastic job. The ensemble cast is great. I think Seinfeld has to be on a Mount Rushmore of sitcoms.
Let's throw our own personal top fives in before we. Do you want to just go? Do you want to list? Or?
Yeah, we can throw our own. But I did want to kind of ask you one question about Seinfeld, Neil. So Larry David left after season 8. So season 9 was just
you could tell.
Huh?
You could tell.
Yeah. Do you think season 9 was worth it, or should they have stopped?
I think season 9 was a stretch. I know Jerry himself wanted to do it because 9 is his favorite number, and I feel like, especially after seeing the series finale, I was really like, they probably could have stopped at 8. So yeah, I think once Larry departed, they probably should have wrapped it there. But still a great series.
So what other ones do you have on your list?
So my top 5 in no particular order. I'm going to say Seinfeld. Okay. I'm going to say just based on the fact that it is now in like 30 something years, The Simpsons has to be considered a top sitcom. They've covered everything since they came out in 1989. I watched it all through the 90s and early 2000s. And, I mean, I haven't seen it lately, but I think it was still a quality sitcom. Number 3 would probably be MASH. I love that series. I love all the characters, the stories. Like I said, it was great seeing them transition from straight sitcom to more lighthearted to kind of darker drama towards the end. But I think it was a great overall series.
Okay.
I would say Arrested Development is probably up in there. It's such a smart and witty show. The writing is so good. The delivery from all the characters are fantastic. It's just, again, a great ensemble cast. And to round out my top 5, I will probably go with Frasier, just because it is fantastic. About all I can say about that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Jonny?
Okay. I want to preface this by saying this is more difficult for me than picking top 5 favorite films of all time.
Yeah, I mean, you spend a lot more time with a series than you do a film.
Yeah, you do. And it's like honestly, that's even harder for me. Doing this is even harder for me than asking my top 5 favorite dramatic TV series of all time too. It's a difficult one. I have honorable mentions. I got a couple of these that they could swap places and I wouldn't be mad, honestly. In no particular order. And I think Seinfeld is going to be on all of our lists. I can guarantee you that. I'd say that with full confidence. Just like Neil said, I love TV shows where the central themed characters don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. I think that's hilarious. The antics they get into, because it's so, as much as I enjoy situational comedy that somehow relates to me, people are like, oh, it's I watch TV to escape reality and not focus on myself. Okay, well, if you want to come to that argument, that's fine. Let's face it. You look at a show like Seinfeld, we all think like that sometimes. We all think we're like, oh, the person that talks too fast, or the person that mumbles, or the guy
man hands.
She had man hands, or that. We're all petty in our everyday lives at some point with something with our friends, and our friends or family are like, why would you think that? But we all do it. It doesn't matter. And Seinfeld, Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld just nailed that on the head so perfectly, and no other sitcom has ever come close to doing that, in my opinion. And there's no character, as far as the supporting roles, there's no character that's stronger or weaker than the others. Kramer and George and Elaine. I actually had to watch. I didn't like Elaine as much when I was younger, as much as because Kramer and George were just so over the top and kooky.
Right.
But Elaine, when I got older and was watching it, I was like, this this woman, like Julie Louis-Dreyfus, is a comedic fucking genius, you know? And it makes me mad that I haven't watched Veep yet. I haven't watched it. It's got her and Tony Hale, and who was Buster in Arrested Development, and it's got a bunch of other really great B-list comedic actors, and I'm still mad I haven't seen it, so I'll have to watch it. But Seinfeld, it has to be up there. Might be my number one.
Quick question.
Sure.
Am I the only one that thinks that Seinfeld was the weakest character of the four?
I don't think, and we've talked about this before, I don't think that, honestly, I actually think that they needed to have Jerry be a little weaker than everybody else. If you have four super strong comedic actors all over the top that are all super eccentric, then it just doesn't work. It's too much. But if you have one guy that's petty and kind of down to earth, and he's that guy that you might consider the straight-laced one, really, because he's such a neat
did play
freak
the straight guy, which is why all the other people were able to kind of bounce off him so
exactly
well. And it's not that Jerry Seinfeld isn't funny, it's just he's not nearly as strong an actor as, because all the other people were actors, he's a comedian,
right? But it also goes, that's very true, and it also goes back to the character tropes we were talking about. Your central protagonist has to be one of these things, and if the square, you see that a lot, or the charmer, or a combo of the two, which he is, that it works perfectly because of that very reason.
Although I guess Michael Richards does do stand-up. Oh.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Not anymore. So Seinfeld is certainly up there for me. I would never question that one. Certainly up there. Always Sunny for me is another one. That one is just so... it's just so evil and diabolical in so many ways. Like, these guys just don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. They're
all so self-absorbed. They're all so great.
They're all honest to God. It's not just Dennis who's a sociopath. They all are. They are all fucking crazy. They all have some form of bipolarism, and they're all somewhat schizophrenic almost. I mean, I love how the littlest things set them all off, and they just start arguing for no reason, and it leads to complete absurdity, and it leads to complete pandemonium, and it's just such a creative show. And the first season was good, but when FX forced them to bring in Danny DeVito and they lucked out to get him, the show just took off to another level, and his comedic chops brought out the comedic chops of everybody else. And you see how amazing he and Charlie Day are together. And that combo has always been my favorite. Anyways, Always Sunny's up there. King of the Hill is always going to be in my top 5. There's just, I loved this. If The Simpsons had stayed strong through 2000, I think once the early 2000s passed, and they kept pumping it out, and because it's just become part of the machine at this point, I feel like that kind of, you know me, I like the underdog stories. I kind of like, we've talked about this, some series need to stop after a certain season. I don't think The Simpsons should have gone for 30 years.
No,
I don't think it should be on TV anymore. It should have stopped over a decade ago. But I still loved it as a kid, and it's certainly it's like Family Guy. You know, it had classic seasons, and some of its episodes are the funniest comedic episodes of all time. But for me, King of the Hill, there was not a weak season in that, and I'm glad they stopped when they did after 13, 14 years. It's such a witty and pure show, like,
and being from Texas.
Being from Texas, you get a lot of the references. You know,
you're like, this isn't a joke. I mean,
this is real. This is something that happens. I hate Oklahoma.
Yeah,
I don't like Oklahoma.
I know somebody that cares about barbecue that much.
Yeah,
or like, I think that,
Yeah, and I love how they do. Now, I don't personally agree with everything that Hank Hill tries to teach his kids, but you have this main character who is that straight-laced guy that was brought up a certain way or was formed a certain way, but he's just very open and he's empathetic about all the situations and all of the problems everybody in his town lives in. Gary and I were talking about this a couple of years ago, that Arlen, Texas would not be a city if it wasn't for Hank Hill. Yeah. He is the most important man in that city.
Absolutely.
Because of his resolve and calm demeanor and his hero mentality, It
would have been funny if they'd have done a It's a Wonderful Life episode with Hank Hill.
Everybody would be dead.
Yeah,
that would be everybody would be dead.
Just like a wasteland, like
it's just Mad Max.
Yeah, Dale's just held up in his house, you know.
Yeah, probably. What you find out, Bill's like super successful, and he's like married 5 supermodels.
Invented some hair care product.
Mike Judge, if you've never watched Office Space or Idiocracy, two of the funniest comedic films of all time.
So good.
Just both of them. Yeah. He's just very good. Yeah. Outside of that, Friends is always going to be on my top 5. I know, Neil doesn't care for it, and Gary says he doesn't, even though he does. That one for me, that's probably the only laugh track show that's a classic sitcom that would be like, hey, I'm going to sit down with my family and I'm going to watch this. It's like TGIF or whatever. That's the only one. It's because they had 6 people that it was a true ensemble. Nobody ever had more screen time than the rest over the entire course of the series for the most part. It's just the situational comedy in it. I've been through stuff like that plenty of times. And they hit multiple classic tropes, and because there were 6 of them, they could do that. And I still think it's brilliant. I've loved it ever since I was a kid. That's the one comedy, with the exception of King of Hill. Those are the 2 that I've loved since I was a kid. I wasn't a huge Seinfeld fan as a kid. Once I became a teenager and became an adult, I appreciated it more.
Well, wasn't it like, I did like that they had set up a joke in Friends over like several years.
Sure. They did multiple jokes over several years.
Yeah, because they did one where I think it was like in the last season where
It's a Break is always a classic one.
Joey signed his name Baby Kangaroo or something, and that like in like season 1 he'd learned Joey was a baby kangaroo.
Yeah, there was an episode where he had found out what a thesaurus was, and so he had to write a letter recommending Monica and Chandler as parents for adoption. And so at the very end of it, he was like, Monica and Chandler are caring humanoids that have big bloody arteries or something. It's like big hearts, you know. And at the end, he's like, sincerely, baby kangaroo, and just stupid shit like that. I mean, I love it. It's innocent. I still find those cheesy dad joke kind of sitcom stuff to be funny. To round out from me, it was very tough, but I had to go with Malcolm in the Middle. I really did. I was debating between this one. I really was thinking while you guys were talking, I was going back and forth between Parks and Rec, The Office, Frasier, and Malcolm in the Middle. Because they really are all so good. It's tough. It really is. Malcolm in the Middle, though, I've seen so many times, and as great as originally with the show, they were only supposed to focus on Frankie Muniz for the entirety of the show, but then they realized how talented of actors that Jane Krasinski and
Bryan Cranston,
Bryan Cranston were, and then the kids that played, I don't remember their names, Dewey and Francis too, but really Dewey and Reese, and it's that same type of humor that you see in Always Sunny and Seinfeld. It's these narcissistic people that care about their family and they're loyal, but at the same time, they only think about them fucking selves. And the humor it's not necessarily crass, but it's more mature than you would think for a show with that many children and adolescents playing major character roles.
Right. Yeah.
And it's always been one of my favorites. That was a tough one for me, but yeah, that's mine. King of the Hill, Friends, Malcolm in the Middle, Always Sunny, and Seinfeld. Good choices.
Mine is Seinfeld. Definitely. I think Seinfeld is really great because it's a clean show. Like, it's not like really as crass, so you can like watch it with younger people or older people and like, family members. And it's also a really clever show, just the way that they stage the issues that are going on, and like how some jokes will come back, seasons later, to be part of, what's going on. And like, there's so many just memorable moments from that show, like the soup Nazi, no soup for you, that are just part of
so many great characters.
My lexicon. And most of the people I know, that they quote Seinfeld at some point, during their day. So Seinfeld definitely for me. The Simpsons, Neil, I'll agree with you on that. I will put a caveat on it that like 1988 through, the late 90s to the 2000s, I think was kind of their heyday. I think that really once the movie came out, it really started to kind of go downhill because you saw a lot of the original writers start to leave the show, and the jokes are just not as clever and tight and amusing as they were once upon a time. And also, the show also used to have a lot more like heartfelt moments. Like there's I believe it's in season 2 or 3, when Marge and Homer are having marital issues, and Marge comes to the plant and she marches her way past everybody, and like Homer picks her up and carries her off into the sunset. It's really a nice, sweet moment that you wouldn't expect from a comedy. And like, so I think The Simpsons, definitely has a place up there. For me also, I'm going to also have Frasier on there, because Frasier to me is some of the best writing in any comedy ever. I think that especially like the first 4 or 5 seasons, it's really, really tight and really clever and really fun. And I think that the actors on that show play off of each other so well. Like Frasier and Niles are just amazing, and then John Mahoney is as the dad is also just really great. Like that show works so well with so much camaraderie. There's a part in it because Frasier played Frasier in Cheers for the length of the run of Cheers, and then he played Frasier and Frasier for another 11 seasons. So there's a part in the last season of Frasier where he's dating this lady that he used to date a long time ago, and she's an actress and plays a child's character, and she says to Frasier at one point, "Can you imagine playing the same character for 20 years?" And that's basically what Kelsey Grammer has done. So it was kind of a funny moment. Stage right. I'm also going to put King of the Hill up there. I think that's just a great show. Just having grown up and been born and raised in Texas, I get a lot of that humor. And Mike Judge, I think, is really funny with how he presents things. Like Office Space, I think, is one of the quintessential movies for why office work sucks. It's just like the stupidest people get promoted to the top and nothing you do really matters. So whatever, man. And
nihilism.
The less you try, the more you'll be successful. Just be careful when you're stealing pennies. So, I think King of the Hill, again, just has a lot of great moments to it. And, quote that all the time. What am I at now? 4? So I got one more.
Yeah, 4.
One more.
Oh, dang.
I told you it's hard.
Yeah, it's really tough. Because I had a lot on my list and I was hoping you guys would knock them off as well. But like I've got like News Radio and The Office and Parks and Rec. But I think I'm also going to have to put Futurama on that list. I think that was
it's another one.
That was an honorable mention for me. That was hard to not put it on
absolutely.
the top 5.
That's my top 10. For sure.
Gosh, there's so many shows that I'm like looking on my list on. I'm like, if I didn't have those shows in my life, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have the sense of humor I do. This is tough. This is like Sophie's Choice, but harder. Take that, Meryl Streep.
Yeah, you got nothing on me, baby.
Yeah, but Futurama, I think, also great show. So yeah, that's my list. And just kind of looking at the list that we all have, it looks like it's going to be kind of tough to get a Mount Rushmore out of this.
I think this is going to be our hardest one yet.
Yeah,
directors and action stars weren't that bad, but
so clearly Seinfeld's on Mount Rushmore.
Seinfeld's on Mount Rushmore.
We all
plus
agreed
one.
on that.
Boom,
Okay.
up on the big board.
Okay. King of the Hill had 2 votes for it, Jonny and myself. The Simpsons had 2 votes for it, Neil and myself. Frasier had 2 votes for it, Neil and myself. And all the other shows just had 1 vote. So let's throw it up there. So King of the Hill, does that belong on Mount Rushmore? Jonny?
That's on mine, man. That's my favorite cartoon comedy show too. And I forgot to put Rick and Morty up there too. Like, anyways, King of the Hill. Yes, that's one for me that's been funny since I was a kid, and it became even more hilarious when I became an adult because I started to understand the social references. And I do want to tell you this. I know a ton of people that I have met over my lifetime that are from states outside of Texas that love King of the Hill, and they still think it's hilarious, even if they don't get those Texas-based jokes. They still think it's great.
Yeah.
It's not, and I feel like when we say it, we appreciate it more because we grew up with people that are somewhat like people from the King of the Hill universe.
Yeah. I mean, Nick is basically Dale. This is what you
basically
do.
Oh, he's going to love hearing that. And Travis is Bill, apparently. Apparently that's what the running joke is. I'd have to give a hard vote on King of the Hill. Absolutely on the Mount Rushmore +1.
Okay, I would agree with that. Neil, are you okay with King of the Hill?
Yeah, King of the Hill is a great show. I absolutely love it. It just didn't make it into my personal top 5, but I'm okay with it being in the top 5. Maybe just because it's got one of my favorite jokes of all time.
Oh, which one?
When Dale is talking to John Redcorn, ask him if he ever celebrated Thanksgiving, and he said he did once.
We did once.
That's horrible, but it's great at the same time.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That's good writing. That's witty, clever writing. Yeah.
Okay. Throw it over to you, Jonny. I think Neil and I are both good with The Simpsons being on Mount Rushmore of comedy. How about you? He's really.
I'm thinking about it. I mean, look. I mean, yeah. I. You know what? I'm gonna have to say no, man. I'm gonna have to. I mean, we'll debate it, and we will get to a top 5. We'll force our way into a top 5. I'm gonna have to say that it didn't even make my top 10. Like I love The Simpsons. I did love The Simpsons early 2000s to pre 2000s, and I appreciate that it's technically the longest running sitcom of all time. Maybe I have a bad taste in my mouth after the movie that's a really good reference. It's a good point. After the movie came out, it just didn't have the same ferocity behind it that it did. It wasn't the hitting force that it once was. It sold out. And maybe that left a bad taste in my mouth. But even then, I've seen episodes since then, and I'm just like, God, you guys are reaching. Like, it's like Family Guy. I used to love Family Guy. It was my favorite sitcom for a couple years. And then the later seasons started coming out, and I'm like, God, you guys are reaching. You know, you got an episode on herpes, and you got an episode. They do. Brian gets herpes. And they have an episode on like they go into alternate dimensions, and they all have like doppelgangers. And I'm like, what is this? This is just too far fetched. It's not funny anymore. It's just weird.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like The Simpsons. It's almost just like a sitcom about social commentary now. And that's just what they've been doing for the last 15 years. And that's fine. Like, that's totally cool. And like some of the jokes are still funny, but it's not original anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, it's become, because when it started, it was just a skit on the Tracy Ullman show. And like, so it was really just an underdog.
I feel like it started the trend of the type. It was a trailblazer for sure. It started the trend of comedies that we see today and the ones that we're talking about that we know and love. It started the King of the Hills. It started the Futuramas. It started the cartoon comedies. I think King of the Hill is a stronger series than The Simpsons is. I think Futurama's honestly, I've always thought Matt Groening did a better job with Futurama than he did with Simpsons.
Okay.
I'm going to say no for right now, but you can try to convince me when we come back around.
Okay. The next one that has 2 votes by Neil and myself is Frasier.
Out of this list that I have, there's probably only one that I feel confident convincing you guys on. And Frasier I was so close to putting this in my top 5. It's not even funny. I have no problem putting Frasier in the Mount Rushmore +1.
All right.
No problem on that one.
All right. So let's see. Neil, you've got MASH on your list. Is that a Mount Rushmore +1 sitcom?
So for me, I think I think it is. I think it was a very well done show. It spanned 11 years. I think it had a good rotating cast. It had a huge number of guest stars come on board. It was funny, but it also had its dramatic moments. It also had its sad, tear jerking moments. I think it is, like I said, the best series finale that I've ever seen for a series. I think it is Mount Rushmore level sitcom.
Okay. All right. I I love MASH a lot. I just have a hard time putting it on the sitcom Mount Rushmore. You know what I mean? Because it
Too dramatic at times.
it really evolved from just being a sitcom to being something else. I mean, it's a great show, and I don't want to say it's not a great show in any way by saying it doesn't deserve to be on a sitcom, because it had a lot of really funny parts to it. But I don't know, when I think back on MASH, it's almost like it's those dramatic moments or those tender moments more that I think of than the comedic ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand.
So I don't know. I don't know if I could put that on the Mount Rushmore.
I haven't seen MASH enough to be able to comment on that, so my initial inclination would be to say no.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a great series. I mean, when I watched it it wasn't the heyday; it had already stopped airing. But I was a kid and I didn't understand the jokes or the references, so I would have to just say no based off of the little exposure that I've had to it.
Okay. All right. Jonny, try and convince us on Friends.
I'm not going to be able to convince you on Friends. There's no way. I might have a fighting chance with you, but I know Neil just doesn't like it. There's nothing I can say to that. And that's fine. I mean, I will tell you this. When you go through looking at the highest grossing sitcoms of all time and how popular the viewership was per episode and per season, Friends is always in the top 5. It's always at the top of the list. But also, you're going to run into Everybody Loves Raymond was up there, and I didn't really ever find Everybody Loves. It was okay. It was a fine sitcom. My parents loved it.
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never got into it. I did not think it was funny.
I
hated Ray Romano's voice.
I loved Frank Boyle's and what's the mother's name? Thank you. What was the mother's name? The actress? Doris Richards? Doris Roberts. Pretty sure it was Doris Roberts. Something like that. Yeah. And then Brad Garrett was great. Yes. The supporting characters were solid, but
Again,
Ray Romano.
Seinfeld.
Huh?
So it's like Seinfeld.
Yeah. But Ray Romano's just so annoying. He's just so annoying. But it's that same thing. I don't think I'd be able to. I'm not even going to try.
It's kind of like Mad About You, like that would always come on after Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And so I'd usually watch it.
Mad About You was funny. Yeah. It's like Will and Grace had funny moments. Just Shoot Me, same thing. I thought they were all, I liked How I Met Your Mother for a bit.
Yeah.
2.5 Men, it had its run, like, for me, and I just,
Okay.
But I can't. I'm not going to try on Friends. I don't think I could convince Neil on that one.
Okay. All right. So Futurama, guys, come on. This is a Mount Rushmore worthy sitcom. You think about all of the enjoyment and the comedic elements that went into Futurama. I mean, my goodness.
So good.
Yeah. I mean, think about, would your life be the same without it? No,
absolutely not. And I have to say, the writing on there is so good. I think the writing staff had like more doctorate degrees and master's degrees than any other show.
What?
I
didn't know
the fact that they came up with 2 different alien languages to incorporate in the show. Like,
are they, Tolkien?
It's a great series. Huh?
What are they, Tolkien?
No, but it's great.
Yeah, I think if we're not giving it to The Simpsons, I think Futurama, has to have a spot up there, because I think I think it deserves it. But I'll leave it up to you guys to vote on that.
I say yay.
I'm gonna say no.
You're gonna say no?
I'm gonna say no. Maybe I'll come back to it.
Okay,
but I'll go with that over The Simpsons for sure. But I think there's probably another 3 or 4 shows that we could throw up here.
Okay.
It's hard to say. God, it's just difficult to say, man.
Okay, Jonny is No Fun McGee over here.
I'm sorry. I just
All right, Johnny, tell us about Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
All right. Well, Always Sunny is going to be one I'll be hard to push because I think I got a pretty good argument for that one. First off, just Danny DeVito. That's all I have to say. I just say Danny DeVito. Who doesn't fucking love that guy?
He's pretty amazing.
Okay. The fact that you see his character arc is the steepest curve out of anybody's. He just goes from
a relatively normal guy,
rich, normal dude,
yeah,
to a completely primal, dirty trash panda. Yeah. And they refer to him as that at some point, you know? There's so many memorable lines and scenes. The fact that they were actually able to not only get away. Here's the thing too. You want to talk about a TV show that doesn't jump onto either side of the political spectrum and that makes fun of both sides, which I find it funny when series do that. You want to talk about a show that's very, very centrist in its comedy? Look at Always Sunny, because they make fun of fucking everybody and nothing is off limits ever. Everything is made fun of. Even if it's in poor taste. It's always made, and the fact that they have the balls to do that week after week, year after year, just is a testament to how daring and bold and unpredictable they can be. And I love that about that group. And it's certainly one of the shows I've watched the most out of, over the last 10 years of my life, for sure. I mean, how many shows can you think of that actually have a memorable musical number? Or an entire episode based off of a musical. Like, that's just one. But
what was that episode of How I Met Your Mother where they had a musical?
Oh, The Suit. But that was one song.
That's a great song.
It's a great song. The Suit song or something. Like, everybody have a suit or whatever.
Everybody have
a suit. I love Neil Patrick Harris. He's a wonderful performer. And that's, How I Met Your Mother it had a couple really good seasons. But Always Sunny is just so versatile. And I'm actually still surprised they're going. And I've seen some of the new the last 2 seasons episodes. Some of them they don't hit, but most of them I still find to be pretty hilarious. I would certainly toss up an Always Sunny. And Neil, I know you've seen every season. Gary, I know you've seen a lot of episodes, but not all of them. Mm-hmm. So I know for you it might be a little harder to. But I'll leave it up to you guys. So, I know okay. I've said no on 2 of them already.
All right. So, Neil, would you put Always Sunny on the Mount Rushmore of sitcoms?
Oh, man. It's a really good show. And at least it was a really good show. The last couple of seasons have really kind of turned me off.
Yeah.
After Dennis had a kid.
And left for North Dakota. Yeah.
Dennis had a kid? What?
In season 12, yeah.
It's been running for 12 years.
14 now.
They're on season 14 right now.
Yeah.
Oh my!
I mean, I do love Danny DeVito and Charlie Day and the cast.
Rickety Cricket, baby, the McPoyles. There's so many good side characters.
I mean, just the fact that I love the lawyer so much.
The lawyer's so great.
The lawyer's so good.
His hands are masculine and beautiful, according to Uncle.
I will say yes. I will say yes. It deserves a spot up top.
Neil, my man. Good choice.
I have not seen the entire series, but I have found that what I have seen very amusing. So
Gary, let me give you an example.
Okay.
You love shows that fight the system and are not conventional.
Okay.
Sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Always Sunny is the only sitcom that's ran for double-digit years that has never been nominated for an Emmy. Okay. Because of the formula that Neil and I were talking about. They did an episode called The Gang Tries to Win an Award, specifically to poke fun at the industry and Emmys and basically a fuck you to them for not giving them any notice because of the style of humor that they do. I don't know if that matters to you or not. I've always personally loved that.
Yeah. I will. I'll put that up there as my trash comedy. Like, instead of I won't do Shameless, but I'll do Always Sunny. Yeah.
Okay, so that's on the Mount Rushmore.
Okay,
cool. All right. Right on.
We just need one more. So, Neil, talk to us about Arrested Development.
Oh, that's a good one. Good.
All right,
That's
so I've
fucking
mentioned
hard.
this before, but I think besides maybe Futurama, Arrested Development has to be one of the most well-written series. At least the first 3 seasons. The cast is all hilarious.
They're so good.
I mean, Jessica Walter is awesome. David Cross, he's actually pretty funny in this. He does a lot of stupid shit in some other shows, but he's actually really funny in here. But Jason Bateman just ties it all together. He's so funny, even though going back to the tropes, he is the square of the family. He's the straight-laced one, but he is so funny. You get a young Michael Cera in there, back when he was funny. I think it's a great show.
The money is in the banana stand.
Always in the banana stand.
Or like, it was the pilot episode where David Cross was dressed up as a pirate, and she's like, "Is that my blouse?" Or I have a blouse just like
Yeah.
Is that the pilot episode? Okay. It was one of the first ones for sure. Absolutely. Oh, God. Carl Weathers is acting coach. Just
Jonny, Arrested
Maybe you got
Development.
yourself a suit going.
God damn it. Because they're out there. I still look at like the list I had of the honorable mentions, and Futurama is still on there, and The Office is on there too. I've watched The Office so many times that it's difficult. Parks and Rec is too.
Ron Swanson.
My
God.
Gary, stop it. This is so hard. I'm going to go cry in my room to go to sleep. I can't pick. There's too many good ones.
This is, I think, the hardest list we've ever done.
I think we've ever debated one this long. Can you imagine if we had a guest on tonight?
Yeah. Like, because normally I'm just like, whatever. I don't care if it's not on the list. But like, I'm like, I really, like, I love these shows.
Oh, God. Arrested Development. It's so good. Come back to me. Come back to me. I got to think about it a little longer. I'm sorry. I do. It's great. It's great. It's only been on. It had such a short-lived run too. That kind of, I'm like, I wish it had gone.
It has
for like
that cult following behind it.
Of course it does, and that's what I love about it. I love the underdog story.
But I'm much happier it had a short-lived run than
too
stretched out too long.
Sure,
that to me, like, Always Sunny.
Yeah,
like it sounds like that's gone too long.
Right.
But Arrested Development was very sure. I think that everybody hated the Netflix one when they brought it back, right?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
See, that's
yeah,
the
it's because they changed the format of it.
That's what kind of determined me. It was after the 3 seasons. It was just 3 seasons, and all these other ones have ran for such a long time. Anyways, I'm just talking out loud.
Yeah. I mean, I would be fine with Arrested Development on the Mount Rushmore because I think it sparked a whole new, like, kind of style of humor. I mean, it was kind of like influenced by The Office. Which one came out first? The Office or Arrested Development?
The Arrested Development. Pretty sure like a year.
Okay, because it kind of. They were both really close around the same time.
Yeah.
The early 2000s was a good time for. Yeah, but like it kind of sparked that whole new thing, and it was just so funny with how they set up the situations, and really, it's the pauses that made everything so funny, and then the looks. How much could a banana cost? $10. $10. Like, it's just so like it was really, really humorous, and it felt so effortless, and that's what I really liked about it. And kind of, as Neil said earlier, it did not have a laugh track, so none of that like felt forced. So, and I think
it falls.
Huh?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it didn't feel like they were straining to get a joke on anything. It just felt like it was so cleverly written, and they knew how to put those characters in situations and write those situations around them to make it as comedic as possible. So I was always very happy with that show.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like Seinfeld and Always Sunny, where these characters are all so self-absorbed. They're all just looking out for themselves. But I think it's just funny that basically each member of the Blue family has their own version of doing the chicken dance.
All right, so Jonny, it's up to you. Do we carve Michael Bluth's face into Mount Rushmore?
I do love Arrested Development. on a personal level, I honestly would I would put The Office above it. I really would. Maybe
Well,
not Parks and Rec, but I would put The Office above it. Just
The Office suffers from going too long though, because
The
once
Office-
Michael left,
after 7 when you're right.
yeah,
When Steve Carell left at the end of season 7 or 8 or whatever,
yeah,
they should have stopped, or 6, whatever the hell it was.
yeah, because then it went like that was clearly the time that they should have ended it.
They
They tried so
such-
hard bringing in Kathy
did.
Bates and James Spader, but
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
You know, and both had such solid supporting cast, because you talk about Tony Hale and David Cross and Jeffrey Tambor and a young Michael Cera and Portia De La Rosa. That's great, but you look at John Krasinski and Rainn Wilson, and Craig Robinson, and God, it's just so hard for me.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
hard.
like The Office. I think anybody that's ever
Can we
worked
just
in
do
an
a Mount
office,
Rushmore and leave off a fifth one? No, I'm kidding.
I mean, like anybody that's worked in an office gets like that humor.
That's the
'cause
thing. Is
I-
like, yeah,
you're like, I hate HR.
Yeah.
Thank you, Toby. You're HR.
and it goes back to personal preference, because I've seen Arrested Development, the first 3 seasons at least, all the way through probably 10 or 11 times, I'd say. But I've seen The Office, close to double that, because it's just one of those. There's
Good
the
Lord,
types
you
of
have a lot of time on your hands.
No, but it's a lot of times but like over a span of like 12 years and shit, like you put it on in the background and you're not really paying attention to what it's just in the background. Like you're you're drinking a beer, reading the paper, like you're smoking a bowl, playing a video game too, or maybe you're doing nothing. You're just doing homework or Futurama. I'm still like rewatching Futurama right now. I'm up in the middle. Just for sake of time and the fact that I'm still, we can be here all night, man.
Yeah,
We can be here all night.
It's hard. Like there's not
It's
a clear
difficult.
answer.
I would put Arrested Development up there with an asterisk, for me personally, just because I really think the 3 seasons hurts it. I really do. I really firmly believe that if it had gone for 5 or more, I probably could be swayed a little easier. But the fact that it only went for 3 really solid years, which were classic years. If they weren't, I wouldn't even be discussing this with you guys. But for me, it's a bit of an asterisk. But yeah, I'll say for the 5th one, because I would have that along with, like I said, along with The Office and Parks and Rec and Futurama.
I mean, I think we can all agree The Office, Parks and Rec, Futurama are all great honorable mentions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Because Johnny, what else did you have on your list that you didn't mention?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm not even going to bother. I wouldn't even bother throwing Friends in there. But Malcolm in the Middle was on there, and I don't know if I'd be able to convince you guys of that one either.
Well, I mean, like we've got our
but-
selection of King of the Hill, Seinfeld,
Right.
Frasier,
And Always
Arrested
Sunny.
Development, and Always Sunny. But just so the audience knows, what were your
Oh,
other-
sure.
yeah.
The list that I had Seinfeld, Parks and Rec, Frasier, Arrested Development, 30 Rock, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Office, Malcolm in the Middle, Always Sunny, Golden Girls.
Okay.
Always loved Golden Girls. Friends, King of the Hill, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Modern Family, and Futurama were like the top ones that popped onto my list. And there's other ones that I probably
Mhm.
forgot to throw on there.
Okay, Neil, what was on your list? Did you have any that you didn't talk about?
Yeah, I mean, Parks and Rec, The Office, Futurama. Let me go back to it here. I did
we
put
all-
Malcolm in the Middle on there. What?
Okay. I was gonna say we all had Parks and Rec in The Office.
Yeah, but
Did.
they're, to me, they're really great shows, but they're not
Not
Mount
top two.
Rushmore.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I
I just-
disagree with The Office, but anyways.
I mean, I do like the Fresh Prince. Yeah, those are the ones that I had on my list.
I had News Radio, The Office, Parks and Rec, All in the Family, I Love Lucy, Third Rock from the Sun, Home Improvement, Roseanne, and Cheers. So
Third
Especially
Rock from the Sun.
Third Rock from the Sun was also
Forgot
right.
about
Same
that
thing though,
one.
short-lived.
it was 6 seasons.
Was it 6? I thought it was like 4.
No, it was 6.
Okay.
But like, yeah,
Been a while since I've watched it.
this one was by far the hardest
we've
to
never-
do.
Yeah. We could still debate on
Yes.
on a couple of these. We could still debate. There's a lot of good ones.
But for now, at least for this episode, our Mount Rushmore of best sitcoms is King of the Hill, Seinfeld, Frasier, Arrested Development, and Always Sunny. All right.
I'm down.
Well, let's close it out with what recommendation, either a sitcom or movie, do you guys have for the week? Neil?
Well, it seems like Johnny never wanted to give it a chance, but if anyone wants to go back and watch MASH, that's going to be my recommendation.
Okay. Is there any particular episode you'd point to?
Ooh, any particular episode? No, but seasons wise, the first seasons with Frank Burns are probably the best ones to introduce yourself into it.
Okay. All right. So recommendation of MASH from Neil. Johnny?
For me on this one, I would definitely have to. I'd love to say Shameless just to stick it to you, but because I did like Shameless a lot. That was a really well done show. The biggest thing for me out of this list that people probably haven't seen much of. Oh God, man, I haven't watched the newest seasons of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm gonna stick to a series. If when I actually have more time, I'll give MASH a try. I've never tried to watch it as an adult. I'm sure it's very well done, and I just like I said, I was a kid when I was watching it, so I just didn't get it. For me, I'm gonna have to say though that I'm gonna have to say if you just want to just laugh yourself silly, you gotta watch Malcolm in the Middle. Okay. You have to. I'm just gonna stick with one of my top picks. I'm not gonna go obscure. Life is unfair. Yeah.
Do you have a specific episode you'd recommend?
There's a lot. There's a lot of really good ones. There's a lot of classics. There's not one in particular. They're all pretty damn strong. They do a lot of episodes where they do a lot of one-track shots too, where they do one steady camera and they'll stick on one scene for like 10 minutes and they'll just go around the house. And the house is pretty small, so that had to be hard. But there's a scene at the end of the series where Malcolm's about to graduate high school and go to Harvard, and the family reveals their plan to him that he's supposed to be the greatest president of the United States in like the history of the country, and change it for middle class America and like lower class America, and be like, he'll be the only one that gave a shit about us. And that monologue that Lois, his mom, has gave me chills, and still to this day I'll actually just go on YouTube and watch it, and it kind of pumps you up a little bit. You're like, I don't know what it is, but it's just such a well-written show. There's so many pop culture references that they do with song and dance. Hal is, if you watch that, you'll understand why Bryan Cranston is one of the most versatile actors in Hollywood that nobody talks about.
Everybody talks about Bryan.
People talk about his dramatic roles, but they do not talk about his comedic chops, because he hasn't done anything outside of Malcolm in the Middle that's comedic. I mean, Why Him that he did with James Franco was an okay movie, but it was okay. When he played Hal, there's never been a character outside of maybe George Costanza that's made me laugh as hard. Michael Scott.
All right, so Malcolm in the Middle for Johnny. My recommendation will be Frasier. It's a really fun, clever show. I have a specific episode, season 4, episode 1. I believe that one is called The Two Mrs. Cranes.
That's a good one.
It's one where well, just watch it. It's a fun little farce episode that's, lighthearted. But yeah, that's my recommendation. Well, gentlemen, thank you all for joining us, and audience, thank you for listening. We very much appreciate it. Make sure that you smash that like button.
Smash the like button.
Smash it. From all of us here at I Don't Give a Flick, I'm Gary.
I'm Johnny.
I'm Neil.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Lead Feather Productions podcast of I Don't Give a Flick. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so that you never miss an episode. Podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and everywhere podcasts are hosted. I Don't Give a Flick is hosted and produced by Johnny Blackburn, Gary Elmore, and Neil Riley. Executive producer, Johnny Blackburn. Technical director, editor, and audio mixer, Gary Elmore. I Don't Give a Flick is a Lead Feather production. Copyright Lead Feather Productions 2021.